Hello and welcome to the continuing build refurbishment of this Fokker DR1. Before I can attach this rudder, I need to really get it as finished as I possibly can, because once installed it'll make it very difficult to mask it and paint. It's got a very simple paint scheme. On the version that I'm looking at, it has a simple cross. It hasn't got the Maltese cross. Many of the pilots had painted that out by this stage and simplified it into this straightforward cross. And looking at the photographs, I need to work out the positioning and the height. Now, that's one that I have. I'm using some squared paper, which makes marking out for a simple geometric shape like this very easy. I've got a slightly larger one and a smaller one. And in fairness, I've seen both variants on the particular scheme, or very similar to the scheme that I'm intending to do. I think the larger one looks better. So I'm going with that. I'll have to position it in the right place, obviously. Any weathering which I may do will be done after I've applied this cross. And now the question is, how do I actually mask it off? Now, here is some stencil film that I've used, goodness me, 40 years ago. For when I was messing around and doing some airbrush work. If anybody's ever done airbrush art, you basically paint with a scalpel, because it's the quality of the masks that you cut that determine what the artwork looks like. And I had a bit play around with it. I like most things artistic. For a while anyway, until I moved on to something else that interested me. I've used this before, but I've never used it on the surfaces I have used it on were a clear paper finish, a very smooth finish. And obviously this low tack mask is designed for that. I don't know how it will cope with a fabric finish. So I'm not sure whether I'm going to use this or just use, for a simple shape like this, just use some conventional, it's like a Tamiya substitute here. I think I'll probably use that, to be honest. Let's have a look and see what this is like. Let's see. I think it'll come into its own when it's like a stencil film with a peel off back. I may save that for the more complicated stencils to come. For example, the writing on the side of the fuselage, although some of that will be painted over. This is where I may use this. I don't know if you're aware of what happened with the colour schemes for the DR1s. They all basically left the factory with a very simple scheme, which was a brushed, well, it's not stripy, it's like the brush marks were visible, a green sort of camouflagey, beigey brown pattern along the side of the fuselage and on the wings. And then when they got to the squadrons, the pilots seem to have personalised them, and that's why they're so interesting. You have a wide variety of different colour schemes and markings and insignia on the aircraft, and invariably the writing that left the factory was painted over the top of, and sometimes some of that showed through. And I'm going to try and achieve that with this model, just to give it a little bit of a different feel to it. But for this, I think I'm going to go straight down the line, and I'm going to use this low tack masking tape. It's a straightforward shape. I'm going to mark this on where it goes, tape it up, mask it off, and then I'll give it a spray. So the first thing is to line it up, and from the photographs I can see that the cross is actually below the line of the rudder, which strikes me as slightly odd, but that's what it is. That seems to be the position. I'll hold it up to the light and square it up with the structure that's underneath. I'm happy with that there. So what I need to do is to mark it off, and I'll do that by marking just inside the corners. In fact, what I'll do is I'll leave that on and I'll tape along the top of it. Let's see if this works. So there's the first. There's the second. Obviously I'm going to have to cut the overlaps out. There we go. So what I'm going to have to do now, I've got to take the end, silly Billy. Now, the trick with any mask is you have to assume, no matter how well you mask it, that it's going to bleed. By bleed, I mean the paint that you're spraying on. Oh, I suppose you could even hand brush in some cases. The paint that's going on is going to bleed underneath, and obviously that ruins the effect. So the trick is, before you actually spray the colour on you want, is to paint the edges so that any bleed is the same colour as the background. And then when you put the subsequent layer over the top, you get a nice clean edge. That's the theory anyway. So I'll trim this off. I'm going to change this blade because I need a really sharp blade to do this. And I'm going to trim this out to remove it. And then we'll get ready for the prep, and I'll show you what I mean by sealing the edges. I think you can see that I've actually removed one of the cross pieces here. Now with a brand new sharp blade, it's really risky cutting down through the mask, but you can use the blade upside down, so to speak. And that's what I'm going to do here to cut through, taking care not to and then this section, this piece can be lifted off. So we only have these parts to go. Now there's no way around this bit, this has to be cut. So it's a case of, this is why you need a really sharp blade, and you have to feel that you're making the cut. You've got the thickness of the template underneath to help you. There you go. And I'm cutting her at an angle. Not perfect. So it was a little nerve-wracking. You don't want to cut through the fabric, obviously. Now, as it is, I can guarantee that if I sprayed that as it is, you would get some creep underneath. Obviously, this needs masking off. So, two options. I either seal around the edge with clear varnish, or I seal around the edge with white. Now, an easy solution would be simply to spray it white again over the top of the mat, which is what I might do. The only risk with that is, if you do that, sometimes a light spray isn't enough and it pays you to go around the edge, with a hand brush in white. I'll have a think and then come back to you when I've made my mind up, and I'll mask the rest of this off with some newspaper, I think, ready to take the black for in here. I have actually opted for hand painting around the edge in white. You can see there's a sort of broken edge now, but if there is any creep of paint at all, it's white, the same as the background. So we'll let that thoroughly dry, give it a flash of the black, and then we'll see if we end up with a nice crisp line. If we don't, well, I'll show you that as well. Right, time to take this off. I've given it a couple of coats. We'll see how it's done. When you're pulling off any covering like this, you always need to pull. See how that's bled under there? Oh, goodness me, let's hope it hasn't. This is just the outer one, but you can see you still get a bleed. You've got to be careful. Okay, so far. Ordinary masking tape's not too clever, to be absolutely frank with you, even to hold down this paper. So let's have a look. That's going over the top there. It's okay. Another one over the top. Not seeing anything because I'm nervous to how it's going to come out, but all nice crisp edges up to now. I'm trying to take it off in the reverse order, the way it was put on. I mean, it's probably far too fussy, this. It was hand painted on these, but obviously you try to keep it as neat as you can. This way. The tape I'm using is a Tamiya Substitute. Tamiya's a really good tape. I got this as it's basically a copy off the internet. Used extensively in plastic modelling fraternity. Okay. And I'll leave this for 24 hours or so before I do anything else with it. Oops. And there we have it. Quite pleased with that. Got to repeat it on the other side to make sure it's all even. A little bit of wry there, and that's because the tape, the way I cut it, but I can live with that. There we go. Hope that you found that useful. At least the edges are nice and clean and sharp and there's no bleed, and that's through the technique of overpainting with the background colour before you spray your final layer on. Bye for now, folks.